some fuel derivatives. Jordan started importing gas from Egypt 8 years ago. The relationship with President Hosni Mubarak's regime is viewed as a strategic asset. And though officials here have kept quiet, it is believed they privately would rather see Mubarak stay than stand down. Nasreen Al-Shamaili, Al Jazeera, Amman.
Well, this whole Egypt story has been playing out for days now, hasn't it? So how are all these latest developments in and outside Egypt playing out on the internet? Here's Imran Khan.
Thanks, Nick. Well, the crowds may be tired and the facilities, well, they may leave a lot to be desired. But out in cyberspace, it seems that there's nothing but support for Egypt's protesters. Onto the microblogging site Twitter first. Here are some of the recent updates. From Rami Rauf, the original demand has not dimmed even after 12 days. Quite simply, he says, we want Mubarak down. Masabarizing on the nature of the demos. I met a Lithuanian man who participated in the Baltic States Revolution 20 years ago. Said Jan 25th was the most civilized protest I've ever seen. And a tweet about the multi-religious aspect of the process. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. in Tahrir, a mass will be held to all Egypt Christians, followed by prayers to all martyrs. We're also getting lots of videos sent to us and to different websites. Here's some of the more recent ones. Protesters in Tahrir or Liberation Square. Get a bit creative and give us a bit of a song. And I think this next video is my favourite one so far. It was posted on Friday, and as you can see, a young child, we believe is about 5 years old, is leading the protesters. He's chanting, "Freedom is born, Mubarak, wake up, this is your last day, and revolution till victory." He'll remember that day for the rest of his life, I'm sure. And we've been getting a lot of images from Egypt on our Your Media site as well. Here's a selection of photos taken in Cairo over the last few days. Here, inventive protesters find a way of charging their mobile phones by stealing electricity from a lamppost. Two men hug each other, the celebratory atmosphere there. And then, just to show the protesters do have a sense of humour, bags of garbage are piled up and named after members of the government. And of course, you can get the latest news and analysis on our website. Just take a look. It's www.aljazeera.net/English. And you can also follow our live blog where you can watch the latest videos and updates throughout the night. That's it from me. Thanks to you, Nick.
Imran, thanks very much indeed. Let's go back to Liberation Square just to check out the scene there, the nighttime scene, of course, that we've been observing over the last... If we take a look at these pictures now, can we see these pictures? There we go. Yeah, the nighttime scene of all the thousands of protesters. They're talking about another million-man march or million-man protest tomorrow on Liberation Square. So plenty more to come on this developing story. Let's leave you with a snapshot of some of the scenes in and around Egypt's Liberation Square on Saturday. This the 12th day of anti-government protests.
January 2011. History unfolding.
And now things are getting worse by the moment.
This film tells the story of 5 days when the people of Egypt broke through a barrier of fear they had known for a generation and rose in revolt against their president.
Police are knocking on our door. The police is on their way up to our office. I will stay on the air if I can until the police come. We're going to keep these images for you guys live until we are actually forced off the air, either by the police or if our signal is somehow interrupted.
Small networks of activists were gearing up for mass action. They'd been agitating against President Mubarak's autocratic rule for years. But they never had attracted mass support until another Arab country rose up against its tyrant.
The protests haven't kicked off just yet. They're expected to start in the coming couple of hours. This is going to be a real test whether online activism in Egypt can translate into real action. Anger has been on the rise in Egypt for the past couple of years, but we have seen similar calls fizzle out. The main difference now is that these calls are coming after what happened in Tunisia, which seems to have not only inspired activists, but actually ordinary Egyptians, a dozen of whom we have seen set themselves on fire in copycat self-immolation similar to the one that had sparked the uprising in Tunisia.
Their demands simple: political freedoms, an end to state corruption, and a better quality of life for the impoverished population.
Anger had been brewing in Egypt for years now. The last 2 years, we witnessed several strikes in the country, rising unemployment, sectarian tension was on the rise.
Well, I think anyone who's lived or spent time in Egypt will tell you there were plenty of signs that suggested that people in Egypt were growing increasingly frustrated. But I don't think anyone could have genuinely predicted that thousands of Egyptians would defy and challenge the government and its various security apparatuses.
President Mubarak and his National Democratic Party are apparently as secure in power as ever on the eve of the planned demonstrations.
What happened that day was that tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of Egyptians, different parts of the country took to the streets. Not stationary protests as we were used to seeing here in Egypt. They were actually marching from one neighborhood to another at the heart of Cairo.
Are we expecting to see trouble?
It's difficult to judge at this early stage.
They started marching onto different parts of the capital, the strategic buildings perhaps that symbolized their plight or their agony, the ruling National Party headquarters, the state television, the foreign ministry.
The ruling party is the symbol of that as far as protesters are concerned and activists are concerned, which is why they're trying to stage this protest now in front of the ruling party.
Just listen to the chants roaring in downtown Cairo, the hundreds of people walking to the streets. It's unprecedented for people to march to the streets this way as an act of protest without security trying to prevent them.
The people we've seen taken to the streets today are not the 50, 60 activists that we've been seeing protesting in Egypt for the past 5-6 years. These were normal Egyptians.
Thousands marched peacefully in the morning. Their ultimate goal, to reach the city's heart, Tahrir Square. But then scuffles break out with riot police. They attempt to divide and conquer.
Indeed, Darren, this news just coming in. In fact, I'm just getting a chance to read the statement that's been issued now by the Interior Ministry. The first official reaction since the morning, blaming the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood group.
The government, quick to seize the political capital, accused their longtime enemy of inciting unrest.
The numbers estimates were around 20,000, but I cannot be that sure. We outnumbered them, which is a very new thing, a new experience to us. When we approached Tahrir Square, police tried to stop us, but our numbers just marched through them and they chanted peaceful, peaceful till they passed through all the police barriers. Definitely not the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood announced that they will not be part of this.
We're tired. Stop inflation. We're suffering. We love Egypt and we defend Egypt, but we've had enough.
Voices roaring into the night. Egyptian men, women and children called for the resignation of the president.
They shot at us. They shot at us. Why? I don't know. Who are we? The enemy? Am I an enemy of the state? I came here to ask just for rights. I came here to ask for a home.
Shortly after midnight, that's when it became clear to everybody that the police, their patience was wearing thin.
A new dawn in Cairo, and a policing strategy in Egypt on a whole new scale.
After a day of mass protests in Egypt, the government has banned any further demonstrations. And there's a warning to activists of a tough crackdown if people do take to the streets again.
I'm very close to the press syndicate. The scene itself was really calm, but right next to it is the Supreme Court, and there were a group of